Yosy, Yosy. She doesn't hear us.
Can you hear me and see me now?
Yes.
Okay, I'm sorry about that. I'm not sure what went wrong.
I just want to make a point about the other day when you argued that a Shemeres Yavin, if she's Mizana, it's only a lav. And I brought the case of Yehuda, and I said Yehuda brought her out to. It seems that she was Chayv Mesa, and you said he was, and you argued that he was a goy. So I would say, if he's a goy, it's not one of the Sheva mitzvahs b'nei Noach. So she shouldn't be Chayv Misa.
Even if he was a goy, if it wasn't from the Sheva Mitzvah B'noyach,
right? And if he's a Jew, then also it's not Chayv Misa. It's only a lot. So either way, I don't understand how he had the right to take her out to be executed. We don't hear you again.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, so maybe it's a little bit better now. And I think the speaker is on. What happens? The speaker ran out of batteries, so that it screwed everything up because it started going to other default microphones. Okay, so now we got it figured out. So David's kasha was, if a Shemeres Yavin Shazinsa is only Chayiv Alav, why did Yehuda say about Tamar by Tziyah the Sisorah? why was she condemned to death? She was no more than a Shemer Shavim. And my tiny that could be because he was a Ben Noach, but this is not one of the Sheva Mitzvahs Ben Noach. So there's no reason why there should have been a Chiv Misa. I don't know the answer to that. I'll have to do homework. Okay, so the Maskana of the Gemara was that from Rabbi Eliezer's expression himself of how he compared his Kavach Chaimer to Zroyim, that proves that the Hafara accomplishes that a later Neder won't even take root. Then the Gemara wanted to know if the Rabbanan, the Gemara says the Rabbanan also has to agree to this type of Kavach Chaimer because we use this type of Kavach Chaimer to teach us that once a girl is a Naira, her father can no longer sell her. So they must hold of the Kavach Chaimer. So the Gemara in fact says, yes, they do hold of the Kavach Chaimer, but the Pasuk, the limud that they make for the Pasuk, of Ishi Yekimenu Ishi Yefirenu to tell us that if you can't be Mefer, you cannot be Mekayim, you also cannot be Mefer, that trumps the Kavach Chaimer. And the Rambam explains that even though the Rabbanan were talking about a Kavach Chaimer, they were just saying you find in many places where logic Kavach Chaimer might dictate a certain halacha, but if the limud from the words of the pasuk tell you otherwise, you follow the limud of the pasuk. Then we learned about the timing for our forest Nedarim. We had a shaila if you have 24 hours or if you only have until the end of the day. And the Gemara at the end brought a story with Rav, who held that you only have that day, you don't have 24 hours. And then the Gemara brought a story with Chia Bar Rav and Rabbi Bar Afuna, where according to the Ran, there are non-related halachas regarding the Nedarim that they passed without full focus because they held you could be Pesach b'charata, so you don't have to delve into so deeply what the reason why they had charata was. But Mati spoke out from the Rosh that these examples were stories to show that they held you 24 hours because the Shadi Gira and the Yosy V'Chaim were to mark the time on the wall as to when they made the Neder so that they would know they have until 24 hours to be made for the Neder. And now we are up to Ein Zayin Amud Aleph. It's not Hasam Midot. Mafirim Nedarim b'Shabbos. A husband is allowed to be made for the Neder b'Shabbos. V'nishalin l'Nedarim shein l'tzarech Shabbos. And if you're asking a Chacham, then you're only allowed to be shoyel on a Neder that's l'tzarech Shabbos. Iboilahu. So that's how I read it. But you could also read it Mafir Nedarim b'Shabbos for the Shalom Nedarim, and Shehein L'Tzarech Shabbos might be going back on Mafir Nedarim as well. So that's what the Gemara wants to know. Iboilu Mafir Nedarim b'Shabbos L'Tzarech Shabbos Oidil Ma'afilu Shaloi L'Tzarech. When it says L'Tzarech Shabbos at the end of the Brisa, is that also going back on Mafir Nedarim, or is it only referring to Nishalim L'Nedarim? That was the child the Gemara asks. Zok the Gemara. So let's see what the Rad says. How the Getonim L'Tzarech Shabbos is it going Akulam As Nisan Koi? Ta'afilu Hafara Dafka L'Tzarech Shabbos. Oidilmo Afilu Shaloi L'Tzarech Shabbos. When it comes to Hafara, a husband or a father can be made for another, even Shaloi L'Tzarech Shabbos. The Loi Koi Ela Ashela. Yishum the Kivon the Tzarech Chacham. Oy Shloished Yoitos Mechse Gedima. So the Rad asks, why would you think that She'ela is any worse than Hafara? Because She'ela is more official. You need 3 Hedyoitos. You need a Chacham. So that means it looks like it's a Din Torah happening, and you're not allowed to do a Din Torah on Shabbos. There are those who ask, the only reason why it's also to do a Din Torah on Shabbos is because you might come to write the Psak. So if the only reason why you're not allowed to do a Din Torah on Shabbos is only because of Gzeira, and this is a Gzeira to that Gzeira, and there's no problem of someone writing down a She'ela on the Neder, maybe it shouldn't be Asher. So they bring a right from the Ram that even though Nechse Kedina is, even though Dina Guf is only a Chash that you might come to write, once they Asher Din, they're going to Asher anything that looks like Din. Inami She'ein Shah Iveris L'She'ela. I'm sorry? No. According to the Ram's Pshat, there are other Pshatim as to why you're not allowed to, that could involve Maharsayim. The reason why She'ela doesn't have to be done on Shabbos, because there's no deadline. Hafara, you have a deadline. You could run out of time. So there's justification to allow it even on Shabbos. Now, if you'll notice, there's a slight difference in the Mefarish. The Mefarish is Mafir Nedarim b'Shabbos, Baal Ishtoi v'Av Levitoi. He speaks to that Mefarish. But if you look at the Ran, he only says Baal Ishtoi. So it's almost as if there is no shaila about the Av Levitoi. So they speak about the type of Nedarim that a husband would be shoyal, why they might be more relevant on Shabbos, or maybe even the Nedarim of an Av Levitoi. So that's what the Chaim discuss as to why the Mefarish says this question is both the afar of the father and the afar of the Baal. The Ran seems to focus primarily on the afar of the Baal. Okay, Zok Tehillah Gemara, Tashma. We need to find out if you're allowed to make hafara on Shabbos. The Tani Rab Zuti Devei Rav Papi Ein Mafir Nedarim Ela L'Tzarech Shabbos. He brings a brayso that says that you cannot be made for a neder unless it's L'Tzarech Shabbos. Amar Rav Ashi. So Rav Ashi says, how could you bring such a brayso? We have a contradicting brayso. Haloit Nanachi. Our Mishnah seems to indicate not like that. Because what does our Mishnah say? Nadra im chashecha, mefer law at shaloi techshav. If she makes her neder, so our Mishnah held that you only have until the end of the day, you don't have 24 hours. If she made a neder, shalashudas time, the husband can be made for the neder up until ois Shabbos. The Ram explains that that's not where the raya is from. So let's go to the Mishnah and see where the raya is from. The Mishnah says, Nadra im chashecha, the rise from the next words of the Mishnah. If it's already dark, so from this lashon of the Mishnah, it's mashma that the only time it's too late is if it's already dark and it's already not Shabbos. The day's over. But what if it's 2 minutes before? There, it's mashma from our Mishnah that you would be able to be made for the neder if it's 2 minutes before. Freik the Gemara, the Amrit l'tzarech Shabbos in shaloi l'tzarech Shabbos loy. If you hold that you cannot be made for another that shaloi l'tzarech Shabbos, so even 2 minutes before Shabbos is over, you also shouldn't be able to be made for, because exactly what are you going to accomplish l'tzarech Shabbos in those 2 minutes? The Amrit l'tzarech Shabbos in shaloi l'tzarech Shabbos loy. Ma'ir chashcha. Why did the Mishnah say that only if it became dark you could no longer be made for? I feel even before it became dark. Any yachal if it's right before Shabbos is over, so you're not going to be able to eat anything anyway. The shaloi l'tzarech, because it's shaloi l'tzarech. So you have a raya from our Mishnah that you could be made for a neder, even if it's shaloi l'tzarech Shabbos, because the fact that you could be made for it right before Shabbos is over, where there will be no benefit to Shabbos, proves that you could be made for a neder shaloi l'tzarech Shabbos. Let's see the Ram. I feel the nami lo yafer the shaloi l'tzarechu. Since she made the neder right at the end of Shabbos, my tzarech Shabbos sheish b'afarosa. What benefit can you possibly have for her afara? Elavadai afilu shaloi l'tzarech mefer la lefishas manoiker. It must be that you could be made for even shaloi l'tzarech Shabbos. And once again, the Ran injects the reason. It's because you're going to run out of time to be able to make a afara. Uchidikatani, just like the Mishnah finishes off with. Shim choshcha v'loy hafer. If it became dark and you weren't made for shuv any yachal hafer, you can't be made for at all because the clock ran out. So the Gemara ends up saying that in fact there is a machlokes tanoim as to whether or not you could be made for shaloi l'tzarech Shabbos, and it's actually going to depend on the machlokes that we already discussed, whether or not you have 24 hours to be made for a neder, or if you only have that day. Zokt Gemara Tanoi. In fact, it's a machlokes Tanoi. Hafaras Nedarim Kol Hayoim. The Tanakama held, our Mishnah held, that Hafaras Nedarim is only for that day. You don't have 24 hours. Rabbi Yosy Bar Yehuda and Rabbi Elazar Bar Shimon, Amru Me'eis Leis. They said you have 24 hours. Zokt Gemara Lamanda Amar Kol Hayoim in Tveiloi. If you only have that day, well, then on Shabbos, the only way you could be made for a neder, if you're made for it on Shabbos, there is no way to make hafara after Shabbos because the day's over. So therefore, afilu shaloi l'tzarech Shabbos haShabbos mefer. They would hold that you could even be made for a neder that shaloi l'tzarech Shabbos simply because otherwise you run out of time and you will not be able to be made for it all. But if you hold, you have 24 hours. Well, then the Tzarech Shabbos in Shaloi the Tzarech Shabbos lohi. If it's Shaloi the Tzarech Shabbos, wait until after Shabbos because your clock doesn't run out, unless of course you made a neder just as Shabbos was arriving. Then you'll run out of time as well. Let's see Heligaran. I'm sorry. Tanoihi, there's no steer anymore between our Mishnah where we were medayik that you could be made for another even shalol tzarech, and the brisa where Abzuta said that you cannot be made for another unless it's the tzarech. Don't ask the kasha adadi. The pluk to the tanoihi. In fact, it's a machlokes tonight. The man the Amar kolayim kuloi tfei loy mefer afi shalol tzarech shabbos. Since we're running out the clock, they allowed any type of neder to be mufar. We don't allow shayla. Why? The afshir b'choyel. Shayla can be done even later. But leman domer me'es le'es l'tzorech Shabbos in shaloi l'tzorech Shabbos loy. If you hold the job full 24 hours, then we will only allow you to be made for a neder that's l'tzorech Shabbos, because you could be made for after Shabbos, even the Efshir B'chol. Hilchach. I'm sorry? Shayla you could never do on Shabbos. No, if it's Shabbos you could. Correct. Hilchach. And if the place could discuss what's called Tzarech Shabbos, and the threshold to meet Tzarech Shabbos is very small, even if it causes stress to you, even though it's not directly related to Shabbos. Since we pass on halacha l'maisa that a forest nedarim you only have that day, you don't have 24 hours. Therefore, mafir nedarim b'Shabbos. We fear that you can be made for nedarim on Shabbos, afilu shaloi l'tzarech haShabbos, even if it's not relevant for Shabbos. So let's think for a minute over here. The whole reason why we're arguing that you're allowed to be made for nedarim that are not l'tzarech Shabbos on Shabbos is because you don't have a choice. When else would you be able to be made for? Once Shabbos is over, you've lost your opportunity. Correct, Rabbi Menachem Zembe, Zatzal, a Pasha Akasha. You know, you have a way of extending the deadline. We learned that if you're Mekayim and Neder, it stops the clock from ticking. So let him be Mekayim and Neder on Shabbos, and then after Shabbos, let him be shoyal on his hakama, and then he can be made for. So if the whole reason why we're allowing him to be made for on Shabbos is only because he doesn't have an alternative, that he does have an alternative. So the Menachem lived right by the war, right before the war. So which Ger Rebbe was it? The Imremis at that time? Because the Ger Rebbe, he's a Ger Chuzid. Sorry? Was the best rule? He asked the Ger Rebbe to decide. No. It was one of the Emes. I think it was the Imre Emes. So the Imre Emes answered him that if you're only being Mekayim something, if you're okay, we need someone who's a Baki in Ger. So the Imre Emes answered that if you're only Mekayim something in order so that you could extend your time to be made for it, that's not a hakama at all. That's not a hakama at all. And therefore, it wouldn't work. Although there are shittas who hold that if you're Mekayim something, it doesn't stop the clock from ticking. Then even tomorrow you won't be able to be made for even if you're shoyal on that come. But what you could do is you could be shoyal on the whole nether. So one of the other Achronim answered that you cannot rely on Sheila. Sheila isn't as foolproof as Hafara. Hafara doesn't need a reason. Sheila does, and therefore you cannot rely on Sheila.
That was right. They showed him from Rebbe before he was born in 1891.
So who was before the Beis Yisrael? The Imams. So the Imams, the Imams teretz that it's not a hakama if you're only being Mekayim it, so that you should be able to be made for it later. Okay, Zogt Ahelu Gemor Vayter. V'nisholen l'nedarim shehein l'tzorech haShabbos. I'm sorry. Right. So that's who had this conversation with Rabbi Menachem Zemer. V'nisholen l'nedarim shehein l'tzorech haShabbos. you could be shoyal on the Nedarim to a chacham if it's a neder that's in tzarech Shabbos. Ibayalu. So the Gemara clears the shaila. Do you say that you could be shoyal on the neder? Is kishalahayal lehem tonight? That's only if they didn't have time to deal with it before Shabbos. What if they made another? He made another before Shabbos, and he could have went to the Rav before, but he let it to schlep till Shabbos. So when do you say that you could be shoyal nedarim shin l'tzarech Shabbos? That's only if you didn't have time before Shabbos to ask the Rav to pass him for you, or dilma kishahayalam tonight. Even if he had time and he left it for Shabbos, he would still be allowed. Tashma, the Gemara brings a raya. There's the kiku le rabbanon libarei the Rav Zutra or the Rav Zira. Rav Zutra or the Rav Zira had a neder, and they were mater his neder on Shabbos. Afilu b'nedarim shahayel lehem pnai miboyjoim. Even though we know that he had plenty of time miboyjoim to be shoyel on the neder, he waited until Shabbos. The rabbanon were still mater his neder. Zokt the heilige Rab iboyelu. She made a neder by lichbenchen, so there was no opportunity to be shoyal on this neder before Shabbos. Inami, so ask she may have lit candles, or she may have made a neder an hour before Shabbos, but there was no Rav around for her to ask. The Gemara comes out lamaskana. Even if they could have been shoyal on the neder before Shabbos, and they left it for Shabbos, still nishalin l'tzarech Shabbos. If it's tzarech Shabbos, you could be shoyal on the neder. Zok the heilige Gemara weiter. Some Rabbi Yosef l'meimar. Rabbi Yosef thought to say, nishalim nedarim b'Shabbos v'yochad mumcha in v'shloisha hedyoyto shloi. Tomorrow's daf discusses what are the requirements to be shoyal on the neder, and we're going to see that there's two tracks. You can go to a yochad mumcha. We're going to learn what a mumcha is. A mumcha doesn't mean he's the god lador. It means he knows the halachas. He doesn't. I don't even know if he has to have smicha. That's going to be a discussion. So either a yochad mumcha, or if it's not a yochad mumcha, you can use shloisha hedjaitos, which is what we typically use when we're matan neder on Erev Rosh Hashanah. We use shloisha hedjaitos. So the question is that we paskin now that you're allowed to be shoyal on a neder on Shabbos. Is that only by Yachad Mincha or even by Shloisha Joitos? Why would Shloisha Joitos be different? Shloisha Joitos loy mishum de mechse kedina. That looks more like a bezdin convening, and that is already a problem. Amar le Abaye said, "Kivan the sphere lo nafilu mu'umid afilu b'krayvim afilu b'layla." Since we hold that you don't need a kosher dying, even if they're standing, meaning normally by the entire day on them sit. Afilu b'krayvim. Normally a karev cannot sit on a bezdin, or by laila. Normally bezdin doesn't sit at night. But all these things are allowed when it comes to being mater nedarim. Therefore, lo mischazi kedina. Therefore, it doesn't look like a din, and therefore, even with shloisha joytosh, you'd be allowed to be mater a neder on Shabbos. The yochad bumcha in b'shloisha loy mishum the mischazi kedina. The kaimalon dein donim b'Shabbos. We know you're not allowed to paskin dinam on Shabbos. But if you're only asking a single Rav, even if you learn, and we're going to see later on, that the definition of a mumcha is that you have to have smicha, so that's already more severe. It looks like a din Torah. Still a minker mil. It still doesn't look like it's a din Torah, which is also because of exer ksiva. So Abaye told Rabbi Yosef, "Kivan is fear on afilim umid v'ila ladina." But if you're actually passing the entire Amar Bereish Berk Shvusay, this the shiva boy, the yonim have to sit. Afilu b'krayvim shapsulim ladin, afilu b'layla sheinik sher ladin lemechsa kedina dika keretuva. Okay, so there's a couple of interesting things over here. We are makbid, if possible, to be mater a neder before Shabbos. That's why the minig is to say Kol Nidre before Shkia. The minig is to say Kol Nidre before Shkia because of this Gemara here, that it's better to try to be, even though you are allowed to be Mater Nedarim on Shabbos, but it's better to be Mater Nedarim before Shabbos. But also the Shaila is, if it's not L'tzarech Shabbos, you're not supposed to be Mater Nedarim. So depending on your Nedarim that you're being Mater with Kol Nidre, we're marked with to say Kol Nedarim before Shkia specifically for this reason, so that we're not Nedarim before Shabbos. The other halach is even though the bezin is allowed to stand to be Matan Nedarim, even though they normally sit, but the person asking for the heter for sure has to stand. And the third important halacha is not all psulim to paskin and psula edis are allowed to be mater and neder. We see here mu'umid kroivim laila, but a person who cannot say edus at all, like an isha, such a person would not be able to be a dayan for hataras nedarim. The psul of kroivim is not a psul in the etzem person to be able to be a dayan. It's just because of his relationship. He's an agebed of it. But if someone's be'etzem pasul, like an isha's pasul edus neved, they wouldn't be good even for hataras nedarim. Zok el gemor weiter. Omar Rab Abba, Omar Rab Huna, Omar Rab. Halacha mefirin nedarim b'layla. You're even allowed to make hafara by night. Break the Gemara. Do I need Rav to tell me that chiddush? It's our Mishnah. But masnisani. Our Mishnah says it. Nadra b'leila Shabbos. Our Mishnah says if she made a neder b'leila Shabbos, yofer b'leila Shabbos. So why would I need Rav to tell me a halacha that I already know from the Mishnah? Halacha nish'alin b'layla. Say that what Rav said over was not that you could be made for b'layla, but you could even be shoyal to a chacham, a neder at night. So let's just see what's happening. Rab Abba said something over in the name of Rav Huna, who said it over in the name of Rav. So Rab Abba heard this from Rav Huna. So Rab Abba asked Rav Huna, Omar Rav Hachi, did Rav actually say this, that you could be shoyal on a neder at night? Now there's a shaila in the Girsa here, so I'm going to read it the way it's written in our Gemara, and then I'll circle back and learn it the way the other Girsa has it. So Amar Rav Abba Rav Huna, Amar Rav Hachi, did Rav actually say this? And the Shalom Balayla, Amar La Ishtik. Rav Huna said no. Rav didn't say it. I said it to Rav, and Rav was quiet. So I'm assuming that he agreed with me. Amar Lei. So Rav Abba asked Rav Huna, are you sure that the fact that Rav was quiet was a sign that he was agreeing to you? Ishtika Amrit or Shasika Amrit? Was he quiet, meaning that he was quiet because he disagreed with you? Or Shasika Amrit, he was quiet because he wanted to drink it up. In other words, he agreed with what you were saying. So the shaila is, what was Rav's intention? And the Gemara brings a raya from Rav to show us what Rav's intention was. Ravika bar Avin is dakikle Rav, the Rabba bikituna. Rav was mater and neder for Rabba bikituna the Rav, which is like in the lobby of the Bismedrash or in a small side office in the Bismedrash. Oimed, he was standing. Yechidi, he was by himself. He didn't have three joints. Ubalayla, and it was at night. So we bring a raya from Rav that you could be made for, you could be matter, you could be shoyal on the Nedarim at night. That is based on the Girsha that we have. But there was another Girsha that it went down different. Amalei Rab Abba Rav Huna, Rab Abba asked Rav Huna, Amar Rav Hachi, did Rav say this? So Rav Huna turned around and asked Rabba, and the next two words, Amalei Ishtik, is erased, is not here. So Rav Abba asked Rav Huna, did Rav really say that? And then Rav Huna turned around to Rav Abba and said, why are you questioning me? Did Rav really say that? Are you questioning me because you're saying, wow, you like that shot, which is Shasi Kamrit? Or are you questioning me, did Rav really say that because you think it's wrong? I'm sorry. I want to be clear. So the question is on Rav Abba, not on Rav's expression. The question is Rav Abba's expression. When Rav Abba asked Rav Huna this question, did Rav really say that? What did Rav Abba mean? Did Rav Abba mean that I agree with what you're saying? Or does Rav Abba mean I don't agree with what you're saying? But it's not a question of what Rav actually said. And the nafkamina would be is if this next line, when we quoted the story from Rav, if that's a riot to our shaila. If the question is what Rav meant, then this is perfect. It's explaining, it's showing what Rav Paskin. But if it's merely a question of what Rav Abba's intention was, then the sugya stops there, and this story is a side story that supports once again Rav Huna's halacha in the name of Rav, that Rav holds you could be shoyal on the Nedarim at night.
What to do with seed time?
Let's see the Rav. Let's see the Rav. And the Rav will explain it better than I could.
What the which seed?
Yeah, it means to drink, but let's see what the Rav, how the Rav explains it. Zok the Gemara, Ela Ema, halacha nisholam in the Nedarim b'layla. Say that what we're quoting from Rav is not that you can mefer, that's pashas from a Mishnah, but Rav said you couldn't be shoyal. The itzrich lashminon, that's a chiddush already. The afagav the be'inan chacham shloishet yoitais the dami ladina. Even though you do need some type of proper bezin format, afilu hachin nisholam b'layla, you can still be shoyal at night. Ashkan kamrit, which is shasi, right? Rav Huna shol is Rav Abba. So this is the second way I explained it. Rav Huna asked Rav Abba, Masha Shayalenu, Rav Hachi. You asked me this question. You challenged me, Rav Abba, and you asked me, did Rav really say that? Why did you ask me that question? Is it Mishum Desvirle Hashmaitza? It's because you agree with what I'm saying, and you agree that you can be shoyal on another Balayla. Give him a drink. Around the beer on me. In other words, I love what you said over in the name of Rav that I want to give you a drink. Or Yishtikin Kamrit, or you disagree with me. Shatatama, you're marveling. How could this be? Heichi Amar Rav Hachi v'niskavdus l'shasei gosi. The reason why you asked me the question is because you wanted to shut me down. Zok the Ran will appear said loy garish tashma. We're not garish tashma because the story that we're quoting from Rav will not show what Rav Abba's intentions were. And the question that Rav Huna asked was, Rav Abba, what are your intentions? And it's just a story quoted where we see what Rav paskin. But the Istagarsi, Amar Rav Hachi, Amar le Ishtik, Amar le Ishkan Kamrit, or Ishtaka Kamrit. V'hachi Perusha, and this is how you would understand the other pshat. Amar Rav Hachi, and who asked that question? Rav Huna didn't ask this to Rav Abba, it was the opposite. Rav Abba asked this question to Rav Huna. Rav Abba showed Rav Huna, Im Shamam Rav first. Did you really hear Rav say this? The Heishiv la Rav Huna. And who answered, in fact, I didn't hear Rav say this. The Iu Kamar Kamei the Rav. I said this halacha in front of Rav, the Rav Shosak, and Rav was quiet. So then Rav Abba said, how do you know that the fact that Rav was quiet shows that he agreed with you? The Shola Rav Abba Rav Huna, how the Shosak la Rav is a mishum the Haidel Dvarecha, Kadim ha'omer lechaveri ashkayach. Was he moided to what you said? Like someone says, I'll give you the drink. In other words, I like what you said. Maybe the reason why Rav was quiet is maybe he ignored you because he disagreed with what you said. And then based on this shaila, where it's a shaila of what Rav's intentions were, the Rav Gufei Abad Ubda Lahat Nedarim B'Layla, you clearly see what Rav's thought was, because Rav himself paskined, he himself did it. He paskined the Neder at night. Gewaltig. So where did he paskin? He paskin it in a small room, b'cheder shel beis hamedrash. So it was like one of the side rooms. He went into the side room and he asked the Rav Shaila. I'm sorry. Well, sometimes they just ignore you. Amar Rabba, Amar Rab Nachman. Halacha, the halacha is nishalin nedarim oimed yechidi uvalayla uveshabbos uvekroivim. You could be shoyal on the neder, even though the dayan is standing, even though there's only one dayan, even though it's at night, even though it's on Shabbos, and even if the dayan is related to you. Vafilu hoyel lahen penai miba. And even if you could have just as easily been shoyal on the neder before Shabbos. The Gemara challenges this halacha. You're telling me that the dayan is allowed to stand? But Tanya, we learned, Yorad Rabbi Gamliel Minachamar. Rabbi Gamliel was once asked a shaila to be mater and neder, and he got off the donkey, Vinis Atayv, and he put on his talus, like they used to do when they were going into Pascha Shaila, V'yoshad, and he sat, V'hiteloi Nidroi, and that's how he was mater and neder. So you see clearly from Rabbi Gamliel that he feared sich, yes, to sit down, and he wouldn't do it oimei. And for the Gemara, there's two ways to be goyers in this Gemara, but there's, regardless on how you're goyers, the pshat is the same. So I'm going to read it like the Ran is glorious, not like our Gemara. You're not poising b'charata. In other words, there's two ways to be matter and Neder. Either you can just say, I regret it. I regret it. You don't need any special reason. That's easy. That doesn't need a lot of thinking. The man regrets it. So will be matter is Neder. But if you hold, you need to have a Pesach. You have to have Ilu Halifiyadeh. Had I known A, B, or C, I would never have done it. That requires a little bit more concentration. Because there you have to actually assess the situation and see if, in fact, the information that he's giving you, that because of that, had he known, he wouldn't have made another. So therefore, you cannot just use charata. You need a proper Pesach. The akar nedra be'inan. You need to be oiked the Neder from its original utterance and say that it was a mistake, and therefore uboy iyuni. It needs good analysis. Hachi yashiv. That's why he sat down. Rav Nachman's over ain't poiskim b'charata. You can't use charata. You actually have to. I'm sorry. Rav Nachman over poiskim b'charata. The Ran changes the gears. Poiskim b'charata. You can just use charata, and therefore you don't need to analyze it so well. So the way I touch it, ain't poiskim b'charata means you have to have a real Pesach, which is harder to look into, and poiskim b'charata means that it's easier to look into because it's just charata. But other Rishonim learn it exactly the opposite. I'm sorry? Exactly. That was the first draft, not according to Rashi. Exactly. So let's see what the Lakuta Rashi says.
Hey, 1 second.
So
he didn't ask me anything about as a Shabbos. Right? By the last month, right?
He said you can be shoyl even shaloi. It said it was Shabbos. It doesn't say if it was Shabbos or not.
Because I see here the past it says but on the block before it says only by
Tzarech Shabbos. That's right. So here it's not clear. That's correct. Correct. It's not clear over here. Okay. So let's see what the Rashi says. He holds poischem b'charata means tzarech lechacham limtoi pesach lishol. So the halacha is the same. If you need a proper Pesach, everybody agrees, the Rosh, Rashi, the Ram, everybody agrees that if you need to find a proper Pesach, that you need to sit down for. If it's just charata, you can stand up for it. The question is how you touch the word poiskim b'charata. So the Ram touch poiskim b'charata means you can even use charata, therefore you could sit down for it. Therefore you could stand up for it. The Likud Rashi learned that poiskim b'charata means that you need a real Pesach. So just to show them how to touch it. But as far as what they're saying, halacha l'maisa is they all agree that if you could just use regular charata, that the dayan could stand for. But if you need a real Pesach, that the dayan has to sit down to focus on.
I changed my mind.
Correct. Now there's a very interesting halacha. Let's look at this halacha. Rav Nachman Sovar poiskim b'charata. Even if he's standing. The Loi Pirish Rashi came, the Parakadar. Now look at this Rashba, a Peldik Rashba, that the Ran quotes that he doesn't understand. The Chosba Rashba Sal. The Lidi Don, the Kaim Alon, Poiskim B'charata. Halacha L'maisa, we pass on Poiskim B'charata, which would then allow the Dayan to pass on another even when he's standing. Right? Kivon, the Me'akra Milsa, Kivon, the Me'akar the Milsa, Poiskim B'charata, since the halacha is, if there's charata here, you don't have to look any deeper. So therefore, when the person approaches the dayan could stand up and listen to what the person is saying. But what if the dayan, after he speaks to the fellow says, I have charata, the dayan senses from him that he doesn't really have charata. So now, the dayan, if he's going to be matir another, he has to find a real Pesach. Does he have to sit down now? Because now he needs to think into it. Zok Rashba, even if after the initial interview, the dayan sees that this person doesn't have charata, and now the dayan sees he has to find a real Pesach, still he doesn't have to sit down. The kivan the ikar dina Muhammad, since he started Muhammad because we paskin that you could use charata, in a moment, we let him stand the whole time. The Ran doesn't understand that. Because if it's a question of needing the extra concentration to be able to find the proper Pesach, How could you say because he started the moment he can continue the moment? He needs the extra concentration.
As he's still-
Dr. The time I can't pass like the Rajwa because I don't understand.
You see, finished it, but then give it your-
Yeah, but that's because Lechatchila he knew it was that because he held Ein Poshkin B'Charata. But the Rajwa was saying is, what if Lechatchila you hold Poshkin B'Charata and you started with Charata, but then you started the Charata is not good. So once you started, you could finish off. Right, if you need more concentration, you don't have it. How could that be possible? So we have a machloikis between Rabbi Gamliel and Rabbi Nachman whether or not you could use charata or if you have to have a real Pesach. Amalei Rabbi Rabbi Nachman Chazimar Hai Mirabanan the Osim in my Rabbi. Look at this Rav who came from my Rabbi. The Amar is the Kikulei Rabbanon Lubarei the Rav Huna bar Avin, and he said that you should listen and take on this Shaila on Shabbos from the son of Rav Huna bar Avin, V'shari Neder, and they were mater his Neder. So you see that you could be mater his Neder. No,
finish the story.
No, that the Amrullah is a different. It's not part of the halacha that we're extracting from the story. No, Chazim Mar Haim Rabbanan the Asim Marava. The Amr is the Kikalei Rabban Lebrei Rafuna. They told them they should take on the Shaila. They should pass on it. V'shor Nidre. I'm not sure if this was on Shabbos or not. The Ran does not comment on it. Let's see if the Likutei Rashi says where this was. I'm sorry?
It's part of the
No, it's part of the story, but it's not part of the halacha that we're learning.
Right. So you see, because of the part of the story that
I don't know if that's. I don't know when this story happened on Shabbos. That's what I want to know.
No,
So it's on a regular day. So on a regular day, it can be Mater's Nether. Okay, so just a regular day, they told him to be Mater's Nether, and then they told him Zostavisin that even though we were Mater your Nether, you're still a Chayte. Zil uboy rachme al nafsha, go do tshuva the chatosa because you did a chet. So this has nothing to do with the psak. They're just telling him. Right, exactly. They're just telling him this is a very serious nether. The Tony, so that's the whole. I thought we're trying to bring some type of ra'ila locha l'gabi the shilos that we were discussing. But Vaisach is not. It's just the Gemara is just trying to illustrate how even after you're matter the nether, you still did a nether. The Tani Rabdimi achud Rav Safra kol hanoider afapishu makaimoy. If you make a nether, even if you're mekayim the nether, nikra chayte, you're still considered a chayte. Amar Rav Zvid, my cover. What do you see this in the pasuk? It says v'chisech talindar. When you finally stop making nedarim, then lo yibachachet. Halachadal. If you make a nether, ikachet. So you made a nether, you did a chet. You have to do tshuva. Tanya we learned. Ha'imar leishtay. If someone tells his wife,
that what they said that he needs
that's the tshuva
is nish valid. That's
right. They made the nether. Correct. Tanya we learned. Ha'imar leishtay. Call nedarim shetaduri. Any nedarim that you made, or that you will make, efshi shetaduri. I don't want you to make that nether. Ein ze nether, or what if he said ein ze nether? Lo yamar klum. So there's two pshatim in what this means. The Ran's first shot is he was actually trying to make a kiyum, but he made a kiyum in an underhanded way. What happened? She made a nether, and he told her, any nedarim that you make mikanu lehaba, call nedarim shetaduri. Any nedarim you make mikanu lehaba, efshi shetaduri. I don't want you to make that nether. But the nether that you made already, I mean to be Mekayim. So he's showing that he wants Kiyum, but he's not really saying a word of Kiyum. Or if he said Ein Ze Neder, Lo Yamar Klum. But what happens if he says?
If he said Ein Ze Neder, that's it what he said? Or he said Kol Ndorim Shindiri Ein Ze Neder?
No, Ein Ze Neder is a separate expression that he said.
So she made a Neder and he said Ein Ze Neder, and it's
that's beautiful. It doesn't fit in according to the pshat that I just said. I agree with that. And the Ran actually points that out. In the other pshat of the Ran, this is an expression of a hafara. So ha'imar le'ishtoi, kol nedarim shetaduri iyav shetaduri. I don't want you to make any nedarim, and he meant to be made for her previous nether, or he said ein ze neder. So the Ran says in the first part ein ze neder doesn't fit in so good. Lo yamar klum, it's not a good hafara. But what if he said yafa sisa? You did good. That was such a beautiful nether. There's nobody like you. What a beautiful nether. Or he said, even had you not made that nether, I would have put that neder on you. The var of kayomin, that is a good nusach of kiyum. That is a good nusach of kiyum. Let's see the Rab. Actually, we don't have time to do the Rab, so let's just go a little bit weiter. Lo yomer adam leishtoi b'Shabbos. A person shouldn't tell his wife on Shabbos, move for lechi, either your neder is hufar or bata lechi, kederach shoymer lo b'choil. Even though you're allowed to be made for a neder on Shabbos, you shouldn't do it the same way you do it b'choil. And lo yomer lo taliva achli. Let the she made a neder, she's not going to eat this cake. Tell her, here, take this cake. Tali should take this wine and drink it. Neder bata me'elav. So you do have to say something, but you don't have to use a lashon hafara. But in your heart, you have to have in mind to be made for the neder. Tanya b'shamay oimrim b'Shabbos mevatel b'liboy and b'choil moitzi b'svasov. B'sil oimer echad zeh v'echad zeh mevatel b'liboy vein tzarich moitzi b'svasov. But it doesn't mean you don't have to say anything at all. It means you don't have to use the right nusach. Okay, let's stop here and we'll be back tomorrow. I'm sorry. Correct.
So dann verwusst gesagt ein sei neder. It is nicht. If he doesn't even have to say why when he said a wrong solution, this is not
beautiful kasha. Beautiful kasha. The Ran says because he wasn't allowed to believe in it. Without big believer, you need a proper nusach. You know, the oilam left already. The oilam who has to come. So we'll learn the Ran inside. He goes through exactly your shilos, but it's a very important Ran. Tanya oimalishta. Akashanodra. After she made her neder, he told her, "Kol nedarim shetaduri, evshi shetaduri, or ein ritzoni shetahei nederis mikan veila." I don't want you to make any more nedarim. Afagav the mashma will say the ma'adid nodrat hashta nichalei. Even though from there's mashma that what she made until now he likes umakayim lula nedrei shenodrat aksra. He's been makayim the nedarim she made up until this point. Afilu achil erma klum she'enzu akam. So according to the Ran's first draft, the first half of this brisa is talking about hakama. And since it's not considered a hakama, he could still make a hafara. He said such a lusuk, which is more of a kiyum. Inami do amala ein kavaisa was don't like you. Inami do amala imlo yadarta ani madecha. Their dvar of kayom, that is a good kiyum. The chalhani lishna da kama mashma. Those are a proper lashon of a kama. And ulufi zeh. The Reish of the Brisa are talking about Lashon HaKama, which are not good, and the second half of the Brisa are Lashon HaKama that are good. But it's all discussing halachas of HaKama. And the Lishon the Reisha, Loi Mahaniba, Bahani Lishon the Seifa, Mahaniba. It's just saying that the Lashonis in the Reisha don't work as a kiyum. And the Lashonis in the Seifa do work as a kiyum. The Brisa is telling us what is a good Lashon for kiyum and what not. Now he has Shirkash. The Lishna, the Ein Neder, Leimashma Ela B'Nedarim Shenod Rekvar, which should be really hafar. So that's exactly what Chaim's kasha was. Among the Gorisly, and if you want to be Goris, that word in the Brisa, this comment in the Brisa, Ein Neder Leimachum, that he has to learn that the Brisa in the Reish is talking about Lashonis of hafara. The Parish of Brisa Haki, Chaim Lishna B'Nedarim She'Abru, Evshi Shetaduri. I don't like your prior nedarim. Inami do amala ein neder. There lo yamar klum de bahafara lashon mefurish play. It's not a good lashon hafara. The chikatani kol nedarim shetaduri osid b'mokim overhu. That's not a problem. Even though I'm talking about the future, I mean to be made for what you made in the past. That's not a kasha. The shenadar takamar. He meant what you meant. I'm sorry. So you find similar to that where people speak in future tense, but they really meant what happened in the past. Inami shetaduri dafka, or maybe shetaduri in the future is dafka, but libador v'lozi the amar baal meif nedarim shalei chalu, or maybe it's a golosh for future nedarim. The seifa katani, the seifa says, in the he the behafara boy lashon mefurish be'akama b'chad mehanach lishni the tani basar chisavi. Hafara needs a much more explicit lashon of hafara, but akama you don't need. The time of the milsa, the reason for this is the chiyuv in the Tanya Kamon kayim beliboy kayim. It's good if you even made a kiyum in your heart. Legari hana lishning mekayim beliboy. The shvach lashonis of kiyum listed are in the seifa are no worse than believe. Aval bafara kiyum the kayim and haver beliboy enim ufer. Their afka shumoyta b'svosov sorich shihei l'shonei bar. You have to speak much clearly. Tanya lo yomer adam liftoy b'Shabbos muferlichi bodlichi kederech shayv labechoil Hadash Rin Lamema Hachi, Lav Mishum the Gzeira, the Het and the Nedarim b'Chacham. Don't say the reason why you can't be mefer is because you might come to be mat in the Nedarim by Chacham. Hakivan the Amar Latli Achli L'Tzarech Shabbos. Clearly, it's a L'Tzarech Shabbos where even a dying would be able to pass it. I feel the B'Shela Shari. L'Tam the Milsa the Kivan the Efsher L'Shnuye B'Shaninon. The whole part is you try to do things a little bit differently on Shabbos. The Tzarech Shivatlan B'Libai the Avgav the Amar Tli the Achli Tzarech Shiyomer B'Libai She Neder Bottle. In his heart, he has to speak out that this Neder should be bottled. U'B'Chol Moiti B'Svasav Im Nadr B'Chol Tzarech L'Haitzi Hafar B'Svasav, which is B'Shamai. It still said Echad Zeh Echad Shabbos V'Echad Chol V'Batal B'Liba V'In Tzarech L'Haitzi B'Svasav Kivan Shomer Like Tli V'Achli Tli Shi. That would be good enough of an expression, provided that he was Mavatal in his heart. Nach Bryce and Nami Ha'idachim. Here's the guy. See, okay, there. I want to skip a little bit because I want to get to the. I want to get to here. Makshi Hacha. Heichi Ami Beisil Echad Zav Echad Zav V'Vatal B'Liboy. Then Tzarech L'Haitzi B'Svasav. How did Beisil say you have to speak it out? The Hidamer like Tli V'Achli Tli Shasi Mi Adaf Lishna Me'Ein Kan Neder. What if he used a bad lashon of ein kaneder or v'yefshis neduri? Darmino il from Pirish Basra to Chesvinon by he the loy man therefore. According to the second shot, we said if you don't have a good lashon, it's not a good affair, which is what your kasha was. The chitem is shiny hashem shloi bitla beliboy. And if you want to say over there they weren't mavatal in his heart, which is what I told you. Hatanya the command afar believe lemanya, but we learned how far believe doesn't help anyway. Zaktiran valav koshi. The chiyam the command hafar beliboy any mover. How far in your heart alone with no expression, that doesn't work. But if you used a bad expression, like tliva achli, there bebitl shabalev mahani. So you need either a good lashon. If you have a shvacha lashon, then you need bitl belev together with it. And if you don't have any lashon at all, bitl belev alone won't work. And he the avshi shetaduri, neder loy mahani, even though they don't work on their own, but tvei adif bitl belev. But if you have bittul belev, it works. So tliva achli and tliva shasi with bittul belev is better than the avshis shetaduri without bittul belev.
Breaking the name.
Mehech shloi bata beliboy umaytze b'svasav lashon garua tani avshis shetaduri ve'in neder kach helu b'toyshus. Okay, let's stop here. We'll be optional. So once again, I can't skip the rounds because the round is answering a kasha that you're automatically going to ask.
The